It was supposed to retreat. After the death of her father, 30-year-old Emma Greaves inherited a crumbling farmhouse deep in the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia. The deed had been in the family since 1854, passed from generation to generation, but for decades, it stood abandoned, its last occupant being Emma's great-uncle, Jonas, who vanished without a trace in 1971. Emma, a struggling writer, thought the quiet might help her finish her novel. She ignored the locals, who stared too long when she mentioned the name. Ravenwood Farm. Some even muttered prayers under their breath. But Emma didn't believe in ghost stories until the first night. The drive to Ravenwood was long and steep. The GPS cut out hours before she arrived. The gravel road twisted through endless pine forest, barely wide enough for her car, until the trees opened onto a clearing. The house stood like a corpse toll, narrow, and slouched under its rotting black roof. The windows stared out like hollow eyes. The porch sagged, and ivy strangled the chimney. Inside, the air was thick, not musty sour like old meat left in the sun. Emma chalked it up to mold and opened every window she could pry loose. The boards creaked under her steps. There were claw marks on the walls, deep ones. She unpacked her bags in the master bedroom, where the wallpaper was peeling in long strips, revealing strange symbols drawn on the wood beneath. They looked like runes or worse, pentagrams. At dusk, the wind picked up, but not outside. Inside, the house doors began to swing shut on their own. Cold drafts brushed her neck. Still, Emma told herself it was an old house, full of drafts and squeaky hinges. That night, as she lay in bed, her phone buzzed with a single notification: photo saved to your gallery. She hadn't taken any pictures. Heart racing, Emma opened her gallery. The newest photo showed her bedroom taken from inside the closet. The timestamp read 3:03 a.m. She ran to the closet and threw open the door. Empty, but the faint scent of wet soil curled into her nose. She didn't sleep. At 4:47 a.m., every window slammed shut at once. The lights flickered and went out, and from the hallway, she heard Ita's voice, gravelly, dry, like leaves crunching under boots. "You came back." Emma froze. Her mind scrambled. Her father had never spoken of this house. In fact, the family seemed to have collectively erased it. And now, after only one night, she understood why. She stepped out into the hall. The old wood groaned beneath her. The temperature dropped sharply. Frost spread across the walls. Then she saw him, a man tall, thin, in an old-fashioned suit, his skin ashen and lips stitched shut with rusted wire. His eyes glowed red, and when he raised a finger to his mouth, miming silence, the floorboards behind her snapped. She ran, down the stairs, through the dark kitchen, out onto the porch, only to find that the road she drove in on was gone. In its place was forest, dense, infinite, as if the world had closed in around the house. Behind her, something moved through the doorway. She turned and saw only a trail of footprints, in black ash. She was not alone at Ravenwood, and whatever was in that house had been waiting. Emma didn't. She locked herself in the bedroom and pushed the dresser against the door. Her breath fogged in the cold air, and her hands trembled uncontrollably. Outside the window, the moon was gone. Not hidden, gone. Only a black void stretched beyond the glass, deeper than any night she had ever known. At some point she must have passed out from exhaustion, but she awoke to a sound she'd never forget. Scratching, faint, deliberate. From beneath the floorboards, she held her breath. It came again, louder now, like nails dragging across wood. Not the sound of rodents or raccoons, too slow, too rhythmic, as if someone or something was trying to draw something beneath her feet. She dared to kneel and press her ear to the floor. What she heard chilled her blood. Whispering voices, layered, male, female, childlike, all saying the same thing: "Let him out." Emma scrambled back, slamming into the wall. She had to leave, Even if the road was gone, she had to run through the woods, scream until someone heard her. She shoved her bag together, grabbed the car keys, and charged out of the room. But the house had changed. The hallway stretched longer than before, impossibly long. Every door she passed had something behind it, scratching, breathing. One door bulged outward like someone was pushing from the inside. Downstairs, the front door had vanished. In its place stood a mirror, cracked down the center. Her reflection smiled, even though she wasn't. She stumbled back into the kitchen. That's when she saw the trapdoor. It hadn't been there the night before, set into the floorboards. It was heavy and iron-rimmed, with a brass ring handle and markings burned into the wood around it, more runes, mixed with crude crosses and symbols resembling inverted trees. Something about it made her heart stutter. She should have run, but her legs moved on their own. She knelt and gripped the ring. Before she could open it, a bang echoed from upstairs. Heavy footsteps stomped across the upper floor. The house trembled. With each one, she backed away from the trapdoor, eyes on the ceiling. Dust rained down. The footsteps came closer, heading toward the stairwell. Emma ran not out of fear, but survival. She fled through the kitchen pantry and out the back door. This time, the forest was there, but it had changed. The trees were blackened and twisted, their bark pulsing like skin. She sprinted through them, branches slashing her arms and face. No animals, no birds, only the sound of leaves whispering. He watches, over and over again. Suddenly, she stumbled upon a clearing dot. In the center stood a stone altar, covered in old blood. Around it were 13 wooden posts, each hung with a doll made of twigs, cloth, and human teeth. Emma dropped to her knees, gagging. She had wandered into something ancient, a ritual site, and when she looked closer, she saw her name scratched into the base of the altar. Emma Greaves offered Ariti. Aranidi, her vision blurred. She felt something behind her, cold breath on her neck. When she turned, no one was there, but in the trees behind her, dozens of figures stood, all dressed in black, all faceless. Their heads tilted slowly in unison. Then they raised their arms, and in one motion, pointed back toward the house. She ran. The woods bent and twisted around her. But after what felt like an hour of running, she burst through the thorns and into the clearing once more, right back at the house. She collapsed. On the lawn, sobbing. From an upstairs window, a shadow moved, and the trapdoor inside the kitchen was open. Emma from the edge of the clearing, unable to comprehend what had just happened. She had run for miles. She felt it in her lungs, the ache in her calves. But somehow, impossibly, she'd ended up right back where she started. Ravenwood. The house seemed different now, awake, like it had been watching her run in circles the entire time, daring her to try again, laughing without sound. Inside, the trapdoor still gaped open like a mouth. She knew she shouldn't go back, but something pulled her forward, a feeling not just dread, but unfinished memory, like she was meant to go below. Maybe the answers were there. Maybe the nightmare would end if she uncovered the truth. She stepped inside the kitchen. The air was colder than before, heavy, like it resisted her movement. The trapdoor lay open at her feet, revealing a steep staircase that disappeared into blackness. No light, no sound. She flicked on her phone's flashlight and descended. The steps were stone-old and slick with damp. The walls narrowed as she went deeper, and the air began to change. The rot faded, replaced by something else. Sulfur. When she reached the bottom, her breath caught in her throat. She wasn't in a root cellar. She was in a chamber. The space was circular, carved entirely from bedrock. Symbols lined the walls, some ancient, some modern, all horrifying. There were bones stacked neatly in the corners, some animal, some human. A rusted chain hung from the ceiling, ending in a hook slick with something black and fresh. In the center of the room was a chair, and in that chair sat a man, old, thin, his skin gray and tight against his skull. His eyes were sewn shut with the same rusted wire Emma had seen in the hallway figure the night before. His hands were folded politely in his lap. He didn't move. Emma froze. Then, without warning, he spoke. "I waited so long for you, Emma." His mouth hadn't moved. The voice came from everywhere inside the walls, behind her ears, from her own skull. "Who are you?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "You know who I am. You were promised to me." "No," she said, backing away. "I never. Your father did." The room spun. Memories flashed her father, sick in bed, muttering strange prayers in his final days. The old Bible he kept locked, pages torn out. A night she couldn't remember when she woke up with dirt on her hands. "You're lying," she hissed. The man tilted his head slowly. The wires over his eyes snapped open, one by one, revealing eyes that burned like coals. "You carry the mark." Suddenly, Emma felt heat burn across her stomach. She screamed and lifted her shirt. A symbol, one of the runes from the wall, was seared into her skin, glowing red like fresh iron. She hadn't noticed it before. It hadn't been there before. Or had it? "The ritual begins again," the man said. The chamber trembled. Stones cracked. Dust fell from the ceiling. The bones began to move. Emma turned and ran, nearly tripping over the steps as the sounds of scraping claws echoed behind her. The man's voice rose into a chant, not English, not any language she knew, but it hurt to hear. She burst into the kitchen and slammed the trapdoor shut, but the chanting didn't stop. It was coming through the walls now. The whole house was speaking it. She stumbled into the living room, and for the first time, she noticed a painting over the fireplace. A family portrait. She was in it, standing beside her father, her younger self, no older than 6, wearing a black dress and a silver key hanging from her neck. Behind them stood the same man from the cellar, hands on their shoulders. Emma screamed and smashed the frame. On the back of the canvas were 4 words, carved in deep, violent strokes. "He always comes back." The floor shook again. From behind the trapdoor came a loud clang, like something hitting it from below. Then another, and another boom, boom, boom. Up, boom, boom. Each strike stronger than the last. And from upstairs, the voices began to whisper again. This time they were chanting her name. They were chanting her name. The house. Emma clutched her stomach where the glowing symbol had faded to a dark scar. The voices upstairs whispered in a dozen tongues, yet somehow she could understand them. Emma, remember. The child, the promise, he waits, he wakes, The trapdoor below continued to boom, louder each time, shaking dust from the rafters. The walls began to drip with black, liquid, thick, tar-like ooze that smelled like burnt hair and sulfur. It oozed in long tendrils, slithering like veins across the wood. Emma ran upstairs. She needed answers. She needed proof. She hadn't lost her mind. Maybe there was something in the attic, old records, diaries, letters, anything to explain what the hell this house wanted from her. But when she reached the second floor, something was waiting. The hallway was different again, longer, darker. The wallpaper peeled in jagged strips, revealing more symbols beneath, drawn in blood this time. The doors she passed pulsed like they were breathing, and from inside them came scraping, whimpering, and wet chewing sounds. She found the attic door at the end of the hallway, pulled the string, slammed at every door down the hallway, slammed shut at once. Emma froze, heart pounding. Then slowly, she climbed the creaking ladder into the attic. It was cold, pitch black. Her flashlight flickered and dimmed, but didn't go out. The space was full of old trunks, cobwebs, and dust that hung thick in the air. But at the far end of the attic sat a small rocking chair, gently swaying on its own. On the floor near the chair was a child's drawing, crayon, old, faded, a picture of a house, This house, with a tall man standing in the window and a girl tied to a tree. Below the picture were the words, "I didn't want to play anymore." Emma picked up the drawing with shaking hands. Behind it, she found an old shoebox sealed with wax. She cracked it open. Inside were photographs, dozens, some black and white, others in faded color. All of them showed children, crying, terrified, standing in front of Ravenwood Farm. In every photo, standing somewhere in the background, was the same man, the thin man in the suit, unchanged through the years, his face always obscured, his shadow always far too long. At the bottom of the box was a brittle newspaper clipping from 1971. 5 children vanish from Ravenwood Farm. Family claims satanic rituals. Local farmer Jonas Greaves was institutionalized after claiming he was feeding the house to keep something imprisoned. When pressed by authorities, he insisted the children were taken by the man who lives beneath the roots. No remains were ever found. Ravenwood was condemned shortly after. Emma dropped the box. Jonas Greaves, her great-uncle, the one who vanished. He didn't vanish. He was taken. And the house remembered everything. Then she heard it, the sound of small feet running across the floorboards behind her. A child's giggle, and when she turned, a girl stood there, no older than 8, dirty dress, hollow eyes, her mouth stitched shut with the same black thread as the man's eyes had been. Blood trickled from her lips as she raised her hand and pointed at Emma. The attic around them groaned, and every item in the room began to rattle and shake. The boxers fell. The chair tipped over. The girl took a step closer, and when she opened her mouth, the stitches tore, one by one. Her jaw hung wide, and she screamed. But the scream didn't come from her mouth. It came from inside Emma's skull. A sound so violent, so ancient, that it dropped her to her knees. She clawed at her ears, but it wouldn't stop. Words formed in the sound. "Bring him back. Finish the offering. Oh, are we take you instead?" And just like that, the girl vanished. Emma stumbled down the ladder, ears ringing, heart hammering in her throat. But when she reached the hallway, she froze. The bedroom door was wide open, and on the floor, drawn in blood, was a large circle inside, which stood a child's skeleton, perfectly arranged. Her locket, the silver one from the painting, rested on top of the ribcage. Emma walked toward it in a trance. She picked up the locket, opened it. Inside was a photo of her as a baby, and opposite that, a photo of the man. But this time, he wasn't in the background. He was holding her. He was holding her. Emma couldn't. The silver locket trembled in her hand. One side held a photo of her as an infant swaddled in blue blankets. Innocent, normal. The other side, the man in the suit. But this time, he wasn't lurking in shadows. He was smiling, holding her in his arms, just like a proud father would. His eyes glowed faintly red, the same eyes she'd seen in the hallway on her first night. It was impossible. She stumbled back into the hallway, nearly slipping on the blood circle that surrounded the child's remains. A memory flashed too fast to grasp of her as a toddler, standing at the base of a tree, surrounded by people in robes. A sharp prick on her wrist, a hand pressing her tiny palm against tree bark that bled. "No," she whispered. But the memories were rising now, not from her mind, but from the house itself. It pushed them into her, forced her to remember. She was 5 when she visited Ravenwood with her father. Just once. She had blocked it out. They had arrived at night. Her father carried her in his arms through the woods. There was chanting in the trees. She remembered the fire, the 13 wooden posts with little figures tied to them. She had stood at the altar, her tiny fingers cut with a silver blade. Her blood dripped into a bowl carved from human bone. The last of the line, her father had said, weeping, "Let her live. Take me instead." The man in the suit had appeared from the woods, his face hidden, his voice like stone cracking. "The promise must be kept. She is marked. Emma fell to her knees in the hallway, shaking violently. She screamed, but no sound escaped her mouth. The house had taken her voice, as it had taken everything else. It wasn't just a haunting, it was a covenant, a blood pact, one that began generations ago, when the Greaves family made a deal with something ancient that lived beneath the soil of Ravenwood. A deal for protection, prosperity, and power. The price, a child, every generation. The house fed the offering too. The one they called the Root Man, the old god beneath the stone, whose name had long been erased from scripture. And when the family tried to break the pact, their children disappeared, their minds fractured, and Ravenwood the vessel remained, waiting for the last child. Emma was that child. But her father had tried to cheat the deal, had left, faked their deaths, hidden her for 25 years, and now the house had found her. Suddenly, the whispering voices returned, louder than ever. They hissed from inside the walls, "Finish the rite. She must return. The bloodline ends in fire." Then, a new sound, one that didn't come from the house, screaming. From outside, Emma rushed to the nearest window and looked out. People were coming out of the woods, figures in robes, torches in hand, their faces covered by bark masks. They walked slowly, in silence, toward the house. Some held ritual daggers, others carried bones, chains, and coffins no bigger than cradles. The cult, the last remnants of the followers, had returned to witness the final offering. Emma backed away, heart hammering, and ran for the stairs. But when she reached the first floor, she stopped cold. The front door had returned, wide open, and standing in it was her father, alive. His eyes were bloodshot, his skin pale, and he leaned heavily on a cane. But it was him, Emma, he rasped. "You were never supposed to come back." She shook her head. "You lied to me. I did what I had to. I tried to save you. I thought the deal would fade if you never set foot here, but the land, it remembers. It always does." Tears welled in Emma's eyes. "You offered me as a child. You gave me to him." "No," her father whispered, stepping closer. "I tried to offer myself, but I was rejected. The house only. Once blood of the line. The girl child. The final Greaves." Emma stepped back. "I'm not dying for your sins. You may not have a choice." Suddenly, the trapdoor blew open behind them with a thunderous bang. The man in the suit emerged. No longer a shadow, now fully seen. He was impossibly tall, his bones grown through his suit, his fingers tipped in black claws, and his mouth opened. Too wide, a mouth of fire and ash, screaming without breath. The cult outside began chanting in unison. The walls pulsed with energy, and then the man spoke, not to her father, but to her. "It is time. One must burn. You, or the house. You, or the house." Emma stood. The house trembled beneath her feet, and the thing in the doorway, there, man no longer wearing a man's skin, waited, without blinking, his ember-lit eyes fixed on hers. Her father dropped to his knees, coughing blood, muttering prayers that dissolved into gibberish. He looked small, broken. A man who had tried to run from a curse, only to bring it full circle. Emma's mind raced. One must burn. You, or the house. That's what it had said. But the house was more than wood and stone. It was a vessel, a body for something ancient. Its walls were lungs, its basement, a stomach, and somewhere beneath it, all roots that stretched into the earth, feeding on generations of Greaves' blood. She thought about the altar in the woods, the drawings in the attic, the photo of her in the locket, held by a creature not of this world. Her life had never truly been her own, unless she took it back, unless she broke the pact, unless she burned everything. The cult circled the house now, chanting louder. The sky cracked with thunder. But there were no clouds, only a swirling black vortex over the rooftop, pulsing like a heartbeat. Fireflies of ash drifted through the air. The ground quaked. Emma turned to her father. "I'm ending this." "She," said her voice cold. He looked up. horror and hope flickering behind his bloodshot eyes. Emma, no. But she didn't wait. She ran to the kitchen. The symbols on the trapdoor glowed red hot. Heat poured from below, the sound of millions of whispers rising like steam. But Emma ignored them. She kicked open the old cabinet beneath the sink and pulled out the rusted jerrycan of gasoline she'd seen on the first night. Beside it was a box of weather-worn matches. She dragged it all to the center of the house, the living room, where the family portrait once hung. Where it had all begun. The man in the suit had followed. He stood at the edge of the room, too tall for the ceiling. His smile was endless. Choose, daughter of fire, sacrifice your blood, or your inheritance. Emma looked down at her hands. The mark on her stomach glowed faintly beneath her shirt. Then she looked up and laughed. No, she said, I choose you. She emptied the entire can across the floor, letting it soak into the wooden boards. The black ooze from the walls hissed as it touched the gas. The man stepped forward, snarling. Now, the edges of his body frayed like smoke, claws reaching toward her. But Emma struck the match. She looked him in the eye. Burn in hell, you bastard. She dropped it. The fire took fast. Within seconds, the floor ignited in a blaze of orange and white. The walls screamed, literally the voice of the house howling in pain. Paint peeled and wood cracked. The cult outside wailed in terror and fled into the woods, robes ablaze, masks falling from burning faces. Her father tried to reach her, crawling across the floor. Emma, no, you'll die. But she didn't listen. She ran to the base of the stairs, ducked into the hallway, and sprinted toward the front door. But it slammed shut before she could touch it. The house wasn't going to let her go. Flames raced toward her down the walls, licking at her heels. Smoke filled her lungs. She staggered into the kitchen, coughing, eyes watering, only to find the trapdoor was open again, and something massive and coiled was rising from below. Black tendrils, bone-white claws, a face like a rotting root, with too many mouths and too many eyes. The thing beneath Ravenwood, the one that had fed for generations. Emma grabbed the old kitchen knife off the counter and held it out, trembling. It didn't lunge, it only watched her. And then, it sank back into the earth, shrieking in a voice that tore through her mind. The fire swallowed the trap door. The house screamed again, and then dashed light. Emma woke up on the ground, surrounded by ashdot. The sun was rising over the hills. Birds were chirping. Ravenwood was gone. Nothing left but a blackened crater, smoldering. No house, no cult, no roots, no curse. She stood up slowly, her ears ringing. Her clothes were burned, her skin blistered, but she was alive, and the mark on her stomach, gone. Behind her, the wind rustled the trees. A whisper, we are always watching, but it was faint, weak. She walked down the hill, barefoot and burned but free. Epilogue. 3 weeks later, Emma sat in a motel room in Tennessee. She didn't write. She didn't sleep much. But sometimes, when the lights were out, she swore. She could hear wood creaking behind the drywall. One night, her phone buzzed. A single photo saved to her gallery. It showed Ravenwood Farm, fully rebuilt, in the upstairs window. A baby stared out. A baby stared out.